Listeners, I see Michael already smiling. He anticipates what I would say. My good friend.
Yeah, and I put my head on a block, and I offer Mr. Brother Bishop the scalpel to cut it off.
The political leader has said several times up to last night that is not a reflection of her personal views or the views of the party. And you understand, George, how elections at the party level work.
So, Dr. Payne, do you have ties? Do you have ties to the National Democratic Congress, Dr. Payne? Or rather, were you commissioned by the NDC
to do this poll? Information because it seems interesting that a lot of your advice is very consistent with what was said. Brilliant.
And Claudette, good luck with everything.
You too, man. May the best candidate win in the town of St. George.
But kill on.
Yes.
You is a young man too, so stop it up. Tell everybody you are a young man too.
We are a people who have always aspired for more. Who've always aspired to do better. Who've always accepted that not because your mother didn't go to secondary school, you should go. It has always been the other way around. You should aspire.
You've been there for a long time. Want to be queen of St. Andrews, but yet the problems around you you're not seeing. You can pray yourself out of the problems in St. Andrews.
And if you're not careful with how and what you say on radio, you will cause people to fight here.
I thrive on that controversy. Some people hate it, but I love it. In other words, every time something goes viral, it's about Kem Jones.
Some persons were getting pension after 2 terms in office, right? And the persons that work for 26 years plus not getting anything. It's just unfair.
God is good, and God looks after me. You know, not just my wife is no longer here, so both herself and the father up there are looking after me very, very well indeed.
Not a few people that you pick up by the side of the road to run in an election. These are not people that you mustered up and you pulled together a few months before you think an election is going to call and you say we want to win an election, so let's come together.
Hello and welcome to the weekly edition of the Bubb Report. This week on our program, we speak with a Grenadian farmer of more than 30 years who will react to the government's decision last week to radically downsize the operations of the loss-making Marketing and National Importing Board. In a late Friday evening press release from the government through the Government Information Service of Grenada, it said, quote, "The government of Grenada has taken the difficult decision to dissolve the operations of the Marketing and National Importing Board and restart the entity as a public-private partnership following extensive consultations with stakeholders on the most effective way forward," unquote.
Because the government has to make a hard decision and make it very quickly as to what becomes of the fate of the Marketing and National Importing Board. And so obviously one of the stakeholders impacted by whatever decision we will make are farmers and other persons who supply or sell to the Marketing and National Importing Board.
We are not closing down MNIB. I think the Prime Minister said that option is not on the table, right? The idea is how can we make it more efficient, right? And so that is why we wanted to have consultation with the people so that when making our decision, we can be guided accordingly.
This week, we speak with a veteran Grenadian farmer about the government's decision to close the entity in its current form and reopen it as a private-public partnership. Also on the report, we examine the current state of the promotions and entertainment industry in Grenada. We will assess the extent to which promoters are adopting best practices in relation to ticket event pricing and whether or not promoters feel the tax rates for events are too exorbitant. We will also delve into current personnel changes that are taking place in advance of SpiceMass 2023. We welcome our guests, Robert Ashley Steele, mass band and entertainment promoter; Dexter Mitchell, former CEO of the Grenada SpiceMass Corporation; Devon George, farmer and former supplier of produce to the Marketing and National Importing Board; and Michael Baptiste, Grenada's former Minister for Agriculture. Here now, Dr. Kellon Bubb with this week's editorial titled Fact-Checking Citizenship by Investment Misinformation: The Truth Behind 2023 Citizenship by Investment Revenues.
Last week, opposition NNP sympathizers and activists in Grenada had a field day on social media, sharing ad nauseum a deceptively edited video that had all the hallmarks of a legitimate news piece, except that it had no byline and no proper editorial attribution. The video used an artificial intelligence-generated voiceover with an American accent, as if an American accent was to give it further legitimacy. Now, it claimed that in this fiscal year 2023, the Deacon Mitchell administration would not be able to fund upwards of 20% of its budget because of significant CBI revenue shortfalls. The propaganda hit piece, shared on social media platforms thousands of times, attributed this revenue shortfall to the passage of the Amigos Act, attached as an omnibus package in the 2023 Defense Authorization Act of the United States Congress. Essentially, the modifications in Section 5902 of the Act state, quote, with respect to the E2 visa, that the foreign state of which the alien is a national and in which the alien has been domiciled for a continuous period of not less than 3 years at any point before applying for a non-immigrant visa may not be eligible for an E2 visa, unquote. In other words, the law's goal is to dissuade CBI jurisdictions from leveraging E2 access as an extra value proposition in program promotion. In the future, this new E2 visa restriction may impede the growth of Grenada's CBI program, which doesn't require CBI applicants to visit or live on the island of Grenada. The propaganda video, one of many in the last few weeks, however, misses some critical points, and its editors, in their attempts to poke holes in the administration's 2023 budget, neglected to mention that in the third quarter of 2022, the program received a record of 462 applications, nearly 3 times as many as in the preceding quarter, and a figure 164% greater than the previous quarterly record from the last quarter in 2021. Now, while Grenada received these 462 applications in the third quarter, it processed only 86 passports, 85 approvals, and 1 rejection. In the fourth quarter statistical report, once it becomes available early in the new year, it may reveal whether Grenada's CBI unit has been able to sufficiently ramp up processing capacity to handle the unprecedented flow of applicants. Some financial analysts, however, predict that Grenada can expect to raise about 213 million EC dollars from the 462 prospective applicants it received in the third quarter alone. And while this projection misses the 240 million EC mark by some 27 million EC dollars, it is far from the claim made in the opposition-friendly video, which suggests the government will no longer be able to raise any of its revenue through CBI funding. And while the opposition raises the E2 issue, it too must take some responsibility for using Grenada's E2 visa status as a pawn in the sale of passports, mired in geopolitical controversy since its inception. Grenada happens to be the only country in the OECS with an E2 visa agreement with the United States, which was entered into force in 1989. It is also one of 4 Caribbean countries with the program, the others being Trinidad, Suriname, and Jamaica, respectively. The countries that run the CBI schemes say these programs will allow them to survive in a climate of uncertainty. It is one of the easiest options available when governments consider economic diversification. Now, while that may be true, easy is not necessarily better or sustainable. The Deacon Mitchell administration, already mired in sideshows and distractions as a new government, should view these recent developments as an opportunity to rethink revenue generation, to include policies that place more emphasis on growing the productive sectors, which tend to pay off in the medium to long term. And good morning again, viewers and listeners, and we want to thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bubb Report. Now, we are going to have a discussion about the impacts and implications of the closure of the Grenada Marketing and National Importing Board in its current form as we know it. Now, we have to go down memory lane a bit before we bring in our guests. The Marketing and National Importing Board was first started in 1973. It was actually not during the Revolution, but under the leadership of then Prime Minister Sir Eric Matthew Gerry. The name at the time was the National Importing Board. It was established initially to engage in the trading of agricultural products, not already marketed under any statutory body in the country. Now, when it was established, it was responsible for trading any fruit, vegetable, other predial production, any cultivated root or plant used or capable of being used, whether in its natural state or otherwise, for the food of man or beast. Interesting terminology there. For medicines, distilling, dyeing, or for the manufacture of clothing and any livestock, poultry, fish, and any other marketable commodity. Now, the 1973 Act established the MNIB as the principal selling body for these products on the domestic or local market. In addition, it was expected to be the export body of agricultural produce from Grenada into regional and international markets. Now, at this time, what we want to do is to welcome our first 2 guests for this morning's program to react and respond to the decision last week. Many say that they were seeing this coming given the history of financial challenges that the entity had, and given the difficulties that the entity had with respect to paying its suppliers. And we have one of those suppliers here. We have Mr. Devon George, who is a farmer out there in Richmond, St. Andrew. Mr. George, happy Sunday to you, and welcome to the Bubb Report.
Thank you, and happy Sunday to you too, Dr. Bubb. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely, sir. And we also have here joining us, he is a returning guest to the program. He is Mr. Michael Batiste, a former Minister of Agriculture in Grenada. He's also a man from St. Andrews, but of course, with roots in Primrose St. David's, because, you know, he's from Primrose originally, his family. But Mr. Batiste are here to give us some very valuable insight, given that he served as a Minister of Agriculture, and he was also and is still an active farmer in Grenada. Gentlemen, well, Mr. Batiste, welcome to the program.
Oh, a pleasant morning to everyone, and nice having me. Apologies for the late replying. However, I was on the way to the farm when I saw the message, and because of the interest that I have in agriculture and, of course, the marketing board, I had to starve my pigs a little this morning, but I'm sure they can wait till after. So I'm here. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Gentlemen, and I would want to start with you, Mr. George. I want to get your gut reaction to the government's decision last week to shut down the operation as we know it. You have been a supplier with the MNIB for many years. You told me on background, it's over 25 years, I believe. Is looking forward, would the government, you believe, by shutting down the operation, gives it the opportunity to make the MNIB a more efficient structure in the country?
Well, thank you, Kellan. But if you're dissolving marketing board, you're not creating an opportunity for it to be more efficient. It has to be something else, because you're shutting down the MNIB. Right. I think there's an opportunity, yes, for another entity to be much more efficient, because we can't go down the road that we have been going down with marketing board in recent past. But in terms of my gut reaction, I'm kind of disappointed that marketing board is being shut down, right? Of course, we need to take a different direction for any entity from which marketing board has been going in the last few years. But I am disappointed that it is being shut down, because marketing board is an institution, a creation of the revolution. Of course, it was started before the marketing board, but in terms of MNIB, right? And it's something that has grown on us over the years. As farmers, we operate with the workers and everybody else. That institution is like family. So for me, it's sad to see it go. And I do not think it was necessary for it to go. I think restructuring and so on is what should have happened, right? Because we have known the time in not too distant past when marketing board was functioning in a reasonable manner, right? We could have sold and got paid on the same day, but we know the recent history. So I don't think that it was necessary to shut it down, to dissolve it, stuff like that, but to restructure. But then again, I am not in the position that the policymakers are in. I don't have the information that they perhaps have been privy to, but based on what I know, I think we needed restructuring. I think it's just a company that has fallen into bad times because of very poor management and so on. And I think if that was remedied, we could have go forward, in a good way. But I don't have the information, as I said, that government and other stakeholders would have had.
Now, I know that government held consultations in St. Andrew in advance of this decision. Were you a part of any of those consultations?
I was not physically there. I followed it online. So, and I didn't contribute because I was online. But I followed and I heard the contributions that farmers and others made.
Okay. Mr. Batiste, your gut reaction, sir, to the decision to shut down the operations. Now, as we know, it has been beleaguered by significant financial challenges. It was operating as a loss-making entity. So, of course, it might have been a very difficult decision by the government to shut down the operation. But given these challenges, do you think that ought to have been the correct move? And as Mr. George said, perhaps looking into further restructuring the entity in its current form. Your thoughts? Michael? Yeah.
Well, first of all, let me say that, yes, I'm here. In terms of reference of marketing was to market farmers' excess produce. Over the years, we have seen a decline in agriculture. We cannot isolate one from the other. The collapse of agriculture is directly to the demise of the marketing board. Naturally, you cannot market what you don't have. Now, over the years, marketing board was heavily subsidized by government. In addition to that, there were a lot of corruption and with political patronage, inefficient management at the marketing board. Now, I heard the Prime Minister talking about restructuring. It is not just marketing board that's in trouble. We have a situation where another commodity board, commercial fisheries, were dissolved. Commercial fisheries and marketing board contributed significantly to the rural economy. And here is how. With commercial fisheries, which is now gone in the hands of a foreigner, commercial fisheries were able to buy the bycatch from fishermen, process it, and of course, sell it to hotels and make byproduct salt fish and other things. In the case of the marketing board has nothing to market. We have another casualty, the port in Grenville. We have to look at all of these entities in a holistic way. The port in Grenville is now closed because the boatmen are saying they do not have enough supplies to go to Trinidad. Marketing board is in trouble because they are not getting the supplies from the farmers as a result of the collapse of agriculture. In 1973, when the late great Sir Eric Gary had the vision to introduce such a board, there was excess agricultural produce on the market. And therefore, he found a way to form this entity so as to help farmers market excess the crops and other produce overseas. If we have to look at restructuring marketing board, the first thing we need to do is have to resurrect agriculture. Resurrect agriculture. When agriculture is in full swing, marketing board will have the produce to market. Over the years, marketing board have been losing a lot of money. Every year, marketing board is buying sugar and rice from supply overseas. They're selling the sugar and the rice to the smaller shops. The smaller shops are making a profit, but marketing board is running at a loss. If you go back and you look at the records in the parliament, you'll see that every single year, government have to go to marketing board to authorize marketing board to borrow money. And of course, government being the guarantor. When the government can't pay, when the marketing board can't pay, the government have to step in and pay. It is time for us to look at a plan for the resurrection of the agriculture sector. Number one. Number two, we have to look at our food import bill. We import millions and millions of dollars meat and other agricultural products into Grenada. We have to look at the poultry industry. The time has come where marketing board have to redesign marketing board. They have to look at the act, amend the act. They already have the physical infrastructure, the buildings, they have refrigeration system and all of that. Let marketing board assist in resurrecting the rural economy. We have a poultry industry where $90 million is imported every year. Marketing board now could be used as a processing facility to encourage local in the rural areas to grow poultry. Marketing board could be used as a processing facility where they dump the chicks after 6 or 8 weeks. They dump it, they pick up a check and go. Marketing board have to assist them with a hatchery in helping them to get chicks instead of bringing it from Barbados. We need a natural hatchery. Marketing board could help in that regard. We also could look at livestock. We are going to St. Vincent and purchasing animals from St. Vincent. The time has come now where marketing board we should look at marketing board as a way of helping us to reduce on the huge food import being bringing into Grenada. Processing facility. Marketing board with a hatchery. Marketing board with assisting farmers with feed, assisting them with inputs and so on. And let's move forward.
Yeah. Let me bring back. Yeah. Let me bring back. Yeah, let me bring back Mr. George here. Now, Mr. George, you've heard Mr. Batiste and his articulation there that the entity in the way that it was set up was really bleeding, except Cassandra is making an interesting observation here. She's saying the purpose of marketing board was not to make profit. It seems as though we're having the type of LIAT debate, whether LIAT should be a profit-making entity as a regional carrier. But Mr. George, let's get you to respond to what Mr. Batiste was saying here, that what has happened to marketing board can be attributed to a failure of the rural economy to be a self-sustaining economy.
Well, certainly that would have impacted marketing board to a large extent. And I think marketing board could have, if so structured, played a role in helping to reposition the rural economy in a sense. It could be one of the players in doing that, right? So I agree with him to an extent, but I think one of the big problems with Marketing Board that brought it to this state is a matter of poor management. Because if the management of Marketing Board would have recognized that they're not getting the produce that they need, right? Then it means that we can't continue to do business as usual, right? We have to change the way we operate. So it's about management. If that was the case, it's about the management not responding to the reality of the time, right? And that is where, I mean, that's what management needs to do. We need to respond to the reality of the time. So if you have a shortfall in terms of produce, because remember, a few years ago, maybe about just before the COVID situation, Marketing Board was dumping a lot of produce. So what happened between then and now? Is it the COVID situation impacted farmers in such a way that if what Mr. Baptiste is saying is correct, were farmers so impacted by COVID that they could not produce to that extent that we had stuff being dumped, and 2 or 3 years after we don't have enough? I don't know that we don't have enough, but I don't say going on what he said, right? If that's the case. Now, what is it the management of the Marketing Board should have looked at is how then do we help our farmers, And that's one of the things I see.
Now, stick a pin there before you proceed on the question of helping farmers. Many farmers have complained that whenever they sell their produce to Marketing Board, they really got pennies on the dollar of the value of the produce. Can you talk about that challenge in respect of the suppliers to the board, the farmers, the primary suppliers to the board, whether or not it was, in essence, a sustainable venture for you as farmers?
Well, okay. Let me say that in terms of what farmers got and whether it is enough, was enough or not enough, is a good discussion. Because I tell you, when I left school in 1983, right, one of the first things I did was to ask my father to lend me $300 because I wanted to get into farming. Now, $300 then had really a lot of value. But when I look at what was being offered, let's say for a pound of cabbage in 1983, you could have got $1.25 a pound. Right now, you get a high price because there's a particular shortage. However, maybe last year or the year before, there are times that you were getting $1.25 just the same, right? When the cost of everything has gone up phenomenally. So in terms of the value, right, for the product, that is one thing. But a lot of us as farmers, we produce a little and look to get a lot, right? And there may be a lot of factors responsible for that. So I would say in some instances, what we get as farmers for our produce is woefully inadequate. But these are things that we as farmers have to be educated about and go into production in a different way so that it can make sense. However, even given that situation, we are still able to get some kind of income, right? And I mean, everybody's speaking about the cost of living. The farmers are impacted by the cost of living as well. And so we need to get more for our produce. But that's where, again, according to Mr. Baptiste, if Marketing Board functioned differently, if the management of Marketing Board was able to function differently, if we had visionary leadership there, we could have gone into doing processing, right, in many areas that could have added value, that could have caused farmers to get more. And then the export that was being done by Marketing Board has virtually grounded to a halt. So where we as farmers would have been able to get a better income, along that line, it became basically non-existent from the Marketing Board end. While at the same time, you have private individuals and individuals who used to be working with Marketing Board who are exporting. So these individuals who worked with Marketing Board at that time, some of them as low-level employees, they were able
and that certainly strikes to me as a conflict of interest, doesn't it?
No. I'm talking about former workers, not
former workers. Okay,
yeah,
not current.
workers,
Okay, all right.
even
Yeah.
workers who work with Martin Board at a low level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you a case in point. There was this gentleman who used to work in Martin Board, and used to come to Martin Board to buy boxes from them for his export. Martin Board afterwards now had to go to that gentleman to buy boxes. A private individual, a man who was a low-level worker at Marketing Board. That tells me that there are serious problems with management in Marketing Board, you know. And what I'm saying is that if we had proper management, all of these things could have been much different to the benefit of the farmer. But Mr. Baptiste did raise quite a number of very interesting things, which are things I think that could have been looked at. But it is now not a possibility if Marketing Board will be dissolved at the end of the month, you know. But of course, I say that plans are always laid and plans could be revisited and so on and so forth. But like I say again, the information that the policymakers have, I don't.
Okay. Michael, it appears as if Mr. George's theory of the case here is that perhaps maybe they need to revisit what the entity can look like in respect of how it can be restructured to ensure that it's sustainable. Your thoughts on that idea?
Well, as I said, restructuring Marketing Board as it is now, to me, is sort of deductive reasoning. Marketing Board is responsible for marketing for farmers' produce. We have a situation where the rural economy have collapsed. I've said so 10 million times. When the former government, I brutally criticized them for the neglect of agriculture. Look, in 1998, I'll go back a little bit. Marketing Board spent a considerable amount of money procuring ripening facilities for bananas. Today they have no bananas to ripe. So that is the investment that gone down the drain. The taxpayers have to pick up the tab for this equipment that was purchased. They're sitting there now. I don't know if they're still operable, but they're sitting there in their facilities. A lot of money was spent bringing in people for the installation, the procurement of this equipment. The problem we have with Marketing Board is not just management. The problem we have is the collapse of the rural economy. Agriculture have collapsed. The days when agriculture was strong, the industry was strong, Marketing Board had produce they could export. Marketing Board had lots of produce they could supply to the hotel industry, the restaurant industry. The farmer's job is not to go around with a bucket selling here and there. The farmer's job is to dump his produce in the Marketing Board, collect a check, and go about his merry way, go back, get a rest, and go back to the land. We have a situation in rural Grenada where the economy is collapsed. I mean, if I'm singing as if I'm repeating myself, I am, because I want that message to go out. We've seen what happened in St. Andrews. The banks have run from St. Andrews. The banks have closed. Business are suffering. The port in St. Andrews, all the boatmen are now going to St. George's. Why? Because they cannot, they said that we do not have enough supplies to do the by-way trade to Trinidad. The time has come where we must put a comprehensive plan in place to resurrect the rural economy, and Marketing Board will fall into place. We cannot talk about restructuring Marketing Board when agriculture is non-existent. If you go into the market now, a pound of cabbage now is about $8 a pound, green peas $15, tomato $8, plantain $4 a pound. Yes, Mr. George may be right. He may not be getting that for his produce, but the middleman with his expenses and all of that, that is what's been sold to consumers. At the end of the day, the average children can't buy a pound of tomato because it's $8 and $9 a pound. So they have to turn to tomato sauce and other additives, other supplements to use. We must look at the situation as it is and recognize the emergency situation of the rural economy. Livestock is in trouble, poultry is in trouble, agriculture is in trouble. And this new government must go into a hurry-up offensive mode, put a comprehensive plan in place. What with what to do about agriculture and fisheries. Fishermen are not going out to the sea and as they used to. And the reason why they're not going out, because we dissolved another authority board, commercial fisheries. Commercial fisheries was set up by the PRG to market the excess fish that fishermen come ashore with. Today we have limited storage space in St. Andrews. When the storage space is filled, the fishermen have to engage in what they call happy hour, because there is no one now coming to St. Andrews buying the excess catch from the fishermen and marketing. That is where commercial fisheries and marketing board played a significant role in the development of our rural economy. And we have to understand that, and we must address that with a sense of urgency, not just Restructuring Marketing Board. Restructuring Marketing Board is not going to do it. What do we do about the port? There were times we export a lot of spices, bananas, plantain, golden apple to Trinidad. That trade now, it's gone. A farmer with a few bags of golden apple can't pay a truck to go to St. George's to put on the boat to go to Trinidad. Those are serious issues that are affecting the day-to-day lives of ordinary people, and we must take stock of that and fix it right away. We have to start addressing those issues.
And let us talk about, and you actually preempted another talking point that we will talk about here this morning. And this is an article written by one Crystal Simeon on the marketing board. She has written several pieces on this, and that has to do with export. And I want to bring back Mr. George here to talk about this. Now, she said, quote, and this article was written in the latter part of last year. She said, most disgracefully, the MNIB has not served its function to provide export markets for the abundance of agricultural produce of local farmers. The MNIB has not been able to source regional and international markets for agricultural produce, such as soursop, which has high market value and is in demand as a cancer-fighting remedy. In some early years, MNIB received limited success in exporting mangoes, plantain, dasheen, and green bananas to the UK market. However, marketing distribution to these markets were not long-standing. Generally, thousands of pounds of agricultural produce have spoiled because of the inability of the MNIB to source ready markets for export, such as produce. Instead, the MNIB has become a competitor to local supermarkets by selling agricultural produce directly to the public at lower prices. I want us to unpack this idea that perhaps the entity's inability to really aggressively export Grenadian produce affected its ability to be sustainable. Mr. George, let's hear from you on that idea.
Well, Dr. Bubb, let me just say that I agreed, Mr. Baptiste, when he talked about the government, that the fact that the government should get into a kind of hurry-up offensive mode to impact agriculture in a positive way. And there has been a lot of talk by government in regards to those things. But
for years, there's been talk about resurrecting the rural economy. Platitudes, really. Go ahead.
Great. And this administration seemed to be saying that they will get on with it. But a lot of the things that Mr. Baptiste raised is important, I think, for there to be a broader discussion, because there is a lot that our people in the public, farmers and other technicians and artisans, could contribute to a broader discussion. And it is the people of the country, I always say, is the people of the country that needs to come forward and put the ideas together to make things happen the way they should happen. With regards to the export, and I think the fact that Marketing Board has not done well with export, yes, has contributed to the demise of Marketing Board into what it is now. And, like I mentioned earlier, there are people who worked with Marketing Board as regular, ordinary workers, some of them not in management or anything, regular food soldiers who are going around and harvesting crops and so, and they are able today to be exporting. So my contention is that the whole problem with this and the export, the lack of export and so on, it's not so much a lack of productivity, you know, as is a lack of the management of marketing board to function well. Because if there's a market, you know, we used to be exporting a certain amount of, let's say, hot peppers, for example, seasoning peppers and all of that. I'm aware that one of the markets that marketing board had overseas for seasoning pepper, one single individual in another territory took over that market from an institution in Grenada. It has to be the fault of management. And if I know certain things about how workers at marketing board allow things to go down, management must know it, you know. I mean, I am one of the people as a farmer who will be last to know certain things. Management know, and management in marketing board has just been inept. We have, for the past 7 or 8 years, we did not have proper management as far as we could see from results, and we did not have a proper board. Even now, I don't know that we have a proper board, right? So these are things that we have to fix. And I don't know how export could be so difficult. When Grenada, for example, is the only country that could export sauce up to the United States in its natural form. Why it is that we're not exporting sauce up at the marketing board end in any significant quantities? Is it that we don't have, we really don't have? And there are some issues, you know, why it is that we don't have large volumes of sauce up. But for something that could be referred to as a national treasure, why haven't we been putting over the last 2 or 3 years, and even now, more resources into sauce up? Look, we're in a privileged position, as I said, regarding sauce up. We alone could export the fresh fruit to the United States. So I do agree that, you know, that is one of the reasons why marketing board has gotten to this point. The lack of proper export strategy. And, you know, marketing board has so many managers. Why haven't these people been called to account by the management, by the board, and by the line minister or ministry of marketing board? So I think from the line minister, the line ministry, line minister, the board, and the management of marketing board, all of them have to take the charge for this. And it must not just be said the manager of marketing board, you know, because the parliament, the line minister, and ministry, they have to ensure that what has to be done within marketing board should have been done over the years. Right?
And in retrospect, we're talking about the previous line. Of course, the marketing board, as we know, was under the Ministry of Finance. At the time, the line minister was former Prime Minister, now opposition leader, Dr. Keith Mitchell. He was the Minister of Finance. Yes.
Yes, and I think as Prime Minister, I don't think that is the best ministry that marketing board should have been in. I think he should have been under the Ministry of Agriculture. I don't know that a Prime Minister, with all of what he has to do, is the fittest person to take care of marketing board. But the administration, that's what they determined should have happened. So yeah, I would go right to the minister responsible for marketing board, right to the minister, because ministers and government, they know how to function. You don't have to personally and individually see after the affairs. You have your designates, etc., right? So the blame has to go then right up to the Prime Minister, because agriculture is the most critical sector in the country, right? And if we're doing well in terms of, if we cannot feed our people, listen, Dr. Bob, if the wheat boat don't come to Grenada for a month, what happened to Grenadian people?
When we will starve. We absolutely will starve. Right? Absolutely. Yes.
And we have great land. We have great land. We may not be able to produce all of our food, but we can produce a substantive amount. We talk so much about the food import bill. And, you know, this is one of the things that could be negatively impacted again now with the solution of marketing board, if a proper plan is not speedily, not hurriedly, but speedily put in place. Because I hear about a 6-month something. That won't cut it as far as I'm concerned. 6 months, that won't cut it. With a skeleton staff to operate the
I believe it's just yes, and that's
okay. So if we keep buying stuff from the farmers, where would it be sold? Marketing board, I am told, sell 95% of what they take from the farmers at the outlets. Now, so we're closing down the outlets, I understand, but Young Street is owned by marketing board. So why are we closing it? I could understand grants might be, you know, costly. Is renting so costly that we won't continue to operate that outlet, you know. So
Let me bring back Michael here. Michael, same question with respect to export. Did the entity really drop the ball with respect to aggressively sourcing export market for farmers' produce?
I want to agree with Devon there when he talk about the line minister. Now, we concentrate too much. The time has come where we have to look at adding value to some of the properties that we export in. Like, for example, sorry, golden apple, soursop. We export all the soursop to the United States, and we buy back the byproduct. The same thing we did with our cocoa. Excuse me. The same thing we used to do with our coconut. The time has come when marketing board terms of reference must include processing. Processing, you add value. You can export as well. You can export locally. And when I say export locally, I mean we produce items here that the tourists can buy when they come in. We do not have to put it on a boat. We need to get out of this exporting business. Everything export. We have soursop. We know what it's for. We know the uses of it. Is there any facility in Grenada here exporting, processing soursop and giving us a final product? No, we don't. All we think about is exporting. Let us redefine marketing board terms of reference, and let us set up an entity where we could utilize all the fruits and vegetables that we have here wasting. Farmers will get a better price for their produce. We can add more income locally because, of course, the hotels that import most of the stuff that they feed the tourists with, we could now look at having a local export market. We don't put it on the boat. The tourists come on the boat. They come by air there. So we have to go past thing. From since we were a colony, we export all our stuff to the United Kingdom, now the USA. And at the end of it all, we get peanuts for it, and we look at what we pay. When you go into the shop, look at what we pay for Milo. Look at what we pay for tin stuff. Look at what we pay for peas. When would we learn? When would we as a people, and we have young, bright people now, as they say, young, bright, intelligent people, let's change the mindset. Let's start processing stuff here on the island. Look, we import an abundance of food for human, and we import equally amount of food for animal consumption. I thought after the pandemic, we would learn a lesson from the pandemic when St. Vincent had to offer us food. The time has come where we must put a comprehensive plan in place to resurrect agriculture and to start processing. Excuse me.
I believe Michael needs to get some water there.
No, I think so. I think so. I think that's the way we need to go.
Yeah. Mr. George, your thoughts on that? As you've heard what Michael said there, do you agree with those very substantial and concrete suggestions?
Well, I think that there are things that we, of necessity, we need to export in the raw state, right? But I think we need to process as much as we could, add value, because we will gain more. And I certainly agree and support him on the fact that we need to change the mindset of our people, right? I think those of us who have been in farming, we need some sort of re-education, right? To help us to do better. And our youngsters, and we do have bright youngsters, right? We need to impact them in a better way in the school system, so that we need to carry on differently. We can't keep going on like we have been going for the last very many years, or we will not go forward, because we're in a state where we're almost stagnated regarding agriculture. And that's where an entity like Marketing Board could have helped, right? I see a discussion on the line, you know, where people talk about whether Marketing Board was set up to make profit or whatever. Any entity you have to make profit, right? And and that is where, you know, setting up a private-public partnership may not necessarily serve farmers in the farmers' best interest. Because Marketing Board could have decided, okay, we could do with $2 million, so we will not be a drain on the country. We could contribute to the national treasury, but we could take money in excess of so much of our profit and put it into helping farmers develop themselves, so that we as Marketing Board could grow, the economy of the country could grow, and farmers could grow, because we help farmers with technology, we could help farmers with training, etc., etc. I think all of that are things that should have been or should be within the remit of the Marketing Board, right? And so that doing that, we develop a different mindset, a better mindset, and because our farmers, as Michael Baptiste mentioned, you know, one of the things I talk about is the fact that the banks have disappeared from St. Andrews. You know, the banks disappear because we have no money, right? And it's the agricultural sector, and it baffles me why successive administrations cannot see the fact that more monies, more effort, more training, and more concerted effort need to be put into the development of our agriculture. We need to stop this talk, just this lip service to agriculture. And I hope that this new administration would really settle themselves in to doing with agriculture. I haven't seen anything from the Ministry of Agriculture yet of note, you know, and we're 7 months on. So the Ministry of Agriculture need the minister. I'm making a call to the Minister of Agriculture to show tangibles, right, with regards to agriculture in Grenada. Let us see a plan. Let us see the tangibles. Let us see where we are going, not just talk.
And I believe he's the Minister of Agriculture. The substantive Minister of Agriculture is from St. Andrew as well, right?
Yes.
That's Mr. Lennox Andrews.
That's
who, by the way, we have been trying to. When the next time you speak to MP Andrews there, Mr. George, please let him know that the invitation still remains open for him to appear on the Bubb Report. For some reason, he has been avoiding us. I don't know why, but please proceed.
I'll have to make a special effort because I'm a person that I don't like to be close to power. So
I am the same way. You and I both. You and I both. I don't like to be close to power either. But Mr. Baptiste, let's get your thoughts here now. And I will go back into history a bit now. In the early 90s, where I would say, yeah, go ahead, Michael. Go ahead first. Go ahead, Michael. Go ahead.
Brother Devon George said, I want to disagree with him on two things. He said, one, the banks don't have any monies. That's not true, brother.
Not the banks is loaded. We don't have any money. Not the banks.
He said St. Andrews. St. Andrews.
Lots of monies in the bank. They have lots of money in the banks. The reason why the banks are moving is because culture collapsed. People are not borrowing the monies, and if you are not borrowing monies, and people have monies in the bank lose money given on people's money. So they need to resurrect agriculture, get farmers to come back in, borrow money to develop the lands, to buy vehicles, and then the banks will start making money. You remember the banks are long-term economic. When you see start out of anywhere, you know there's trouble behind. Now he said he has not seen anything tangible from this new government in agriculture just yet, and I'm glad he said that, and I didn't say it because I don't want to be seen as criticizing the government publicly so far. But I noticed the government started off on the same failed New National Party policies. They started with a labor subsidy program, and they were sending people to clear people's lands. And they have not yet come out with the result of that program, because shortly thereafter, we saw local agricultural products skyrocketing. They went out, they cleared the lands, and they had no plans for replanting. They had no plans to supply farmers with inputs. They went and they spent millions of dollars clearing people's lands, and in 2 weeks the rainfall and the grass grow right back. So it's the same failed NNP policies that they continue with. And I want to say to them, look, I was the architect of this labor subsidy program, and it does not work like that. You must have a plan for specific commodities. You must have a plan for it. You must start from creation, help the farmers to clear the lands. You must give them inputs. You must give them technical support and follow-up visit from the cradle until it's time for harvesting. You just can't send people out to clean people's lands, spend millions of dollars cleaning people's lands. You have no plans for replanting. There's no technical support as to what you're going to plant in the lands. So what's the purpose of that? And the grass grow right back. That to me again is a waste of taxpayers' money. Let's get to it. Let's get back to marketing board. Marketing board right now is in the deficit of $32 million. Think about what that $32 million will do for agriculture. If you spend $5 million resurrecting the banana industry, not for but and I like to look for whenever in Grenada, there should be vendors there with beautiful ripe bananas offering tourists bananas. You don't have to put that on the boat. There should be vendors there offering them a glass of soursop, a glass of pineapple juice, a fresh glass of mango juice that we produce here. Why spend all these monies in a useless effort in marketing board when the monies could be better spent in helping farmers to process some of that stuff? If you don't want to go into processing with marketing board, partner with local entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of local people that are interested in agriculture. I admire the young man here, Devon. I wondered sometimes when I first met him, I wonder why he left teaching to go into agriculture. And over the years, I happen to know the gentleman, he has a passion for agriculture. But he's out there, and he's one of the people that government could partner with in some kind of way to help develop the agriculture sector. Not enough assistance is given to farmers in the way of Imanis. We send people out to work in Indian stores. We send them to clean people's homes. What about the farmers? Why not have a cadre of workers working along with farmers to help them develop the lands? Corn is a short-term crop. Sweet potatoes. All of this stuff that we need here that would help our people to cut down on the food import bill and the high cost of living. If we assisting farmers to clear the lands and you're planting peas, then there's a pound of green peas should be $15. There's no way a pound of plantain should be $4 a pound. So let us help farmers, and in that regards, the farmers themselves would lower the produce. We could cut down on the food import bill because we can eat local. You cannot ask Grenadians now to eat local. That is suicide. A single woman head of household cannot go to the market and purchase agriculture products to feed her family. It just cannot happen. She will buy the rice, she will buy the flour, she will buy the imported chicken, and she'll make ends meet with that. The times come where we have to look at our food import bill, look at it closely. The Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Agriculture, they must work hand in hand and see how you can help farmers to reduce on the food import bill. And then we can say we have genuine growth, not the artificial growth that we saw under the new National Party where you're pumping monies here and there in a makeshift work thing. Let us have sustainable employment. Sustainable employment could come from agriculture. Poultry is one. We have a market. We do not have to look for the market. Livestock. We go into St. Vincent and Simpson. Wrong with us, we can grow it here. The first NDC administration, they said when they were campaigning that Grenada was covered with vine, and I thought they would bring in a lot of animals to eat away the vine. It did not happen at all. So since 2008, we saw agriculture continuously on the decline. It has got to the point now where the decline of agriculture has brought along casualties. The bank left, the port closure in Grenada and Marketing Board is now closed. When will we learn?
And on that note, let us get to some viewer comments. Viewers, thank you for tuning in, and please remember to share this program so that everyone can get an opportunity to hear this valuable information. Jimmy Henry is saying there is a lack of enthusiasm amongst too many young Grenadians to keep or improve the base of agriculture. Agriculture is labor intensive, highly skill required, and mandates educational updates. I'm sure they're speaking to the choir here, gentlemen. You guys, I'm sure, also would agree with that viewer sentiment there. We have Cadella Henry saying, Victor is saying, we need to get serious. We have Muslims to feed, Christians to feed. Invest in livestock, seed banks, etc. Cassandra is saying we are still waiting for a land use policy. One is still in draft. Arable agricultural lands are being sold for residential and commercial purposes. That's a very important point there, Cassandra. We see what's happening up at Liver. Quite frankly, it is a crime against the environment, in my view, and I will hold on to that view. Not all CBI projects, in my view, should be destroying our environment in the way that it is doing. Right, Karen Jolly saying we have to broaden the scope from the non-traditional crops as regards to exportation. This week, St. Vincent and the Grenadines exported over 30,000 pounds of dasheen. Let's get some other comments here. Someone else is saying, May, I believe your name is. How could we revive agriculture when we are selling out all agricultural lands? Government should put a halt on the sale of all agricultural land until they can have the agriculture system up and running in the proper way. But of course, that is a catch-22 because a lot of agricultural land are privately owned. You can't tell a private landowner what to do with their land, of course. But in the absence of a land use policy, everyone will do anything. It's sort of a anything goes approach. Kenley Edwards is saying the problem with agriculture in Grenada is lack of sustainability. There have been several interventions made to promote the agriculture sector. However, the programs have not been sustained. That's the genesis of the problem, the lack of a proper support structure. I want you to pick up on that, Michael. And that is the idea of sustainability. And the point I was trying to make earlier was the fact that international global trading conditions radically changed for Grenada when the World Trade Organization essentially liberalized export regimes. And for example, we had protectionism on the bananas, where we were able to get our bananas into ready markets in the United Kingdom. With new World Trade Organization rules, that was scuttled. And so we had to compete with the rest of them. Largely, you were competing with major corporations. You were competing with factory farms in the United States. You're competing with global multilateral organizations. And really and truly, can we compete at the scale at which would be able to sustain us in that environment? I want to get your thoughts on that, Mr. George, and then I'll get back to Michael. Just unmute the mic, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just distracted there for a second. So let Michael go ahead. I'll come back to you shortly.
Yeah, Michael, go ahead.
We can. Yes, we can. We can look at organic growing export crops, organic export crops, okay? We started growing organic bananas. Sainsbury's supermarket in England. I was instrumental in the negotiation for supplying them with organic bananas. There's a niche market for that. A lot of our soil here, virgin soil. And some people talk about land use. We must have a land use policy. Yes, we can have a land use policy. But when you look around Grenada, you see 3/4 of it is in high woods. So policy, yes, but that should not be an excuse.
I think yeah. I think Michael's internet is sputtering there. So, Mr. Georgia, I'm going to try and bring you back here. Michael, okay, we lost you there for a second. You were saying that this was not an excuse for something, but please make that point again.
I said the land use, the lack of a land use policy should not be an excuse for us not going into full-scale agriculture. We can have both. We need development, we need housing, and so, but 3/4 of Grenada is in high woods. When you look around on our communities, we can see a lot of lands, idle lands. The time has come where government must have a policy and serious agriculture policies as to how we develop these lands. There's a lot of young people that looking for lands for short crops and other things that they want to grow. They talk about marijuana. They talk about legalizing marijuana or decriminalizing it. Where would you plant the marijuana? Obviously, Carriacou came in. They found lands for the cane. Carriacou have thousands of acres of lands on the cane production. These lands were idle lands. So I do not agree with those who say we must have a land policy in order for us to redevelop agriculture. We can and must develop agriculture in a sustainable way. Agriculture and fisheries. And the marketing board now that they have dissolved the marketing board, government must come up with an entity along with and look at how we can reduce on this huge food import bill, whether it's through marketing board serving as a processing center, whether marketing board serving as a go-between farmers and government to help bringing in inputs like fertilizer and other stuff, in helping sourcing agricultural inputs, corn and livestock and so on, and distribute it to the farmers. Farmers need help. A lot of money is being spent in way, and the time has come. We must look at the National Farmers Association. Now that the marketing board is gone, we must resurrect the National Farmers Association and have farmers outlets around the country, owned and operated by farmers, where they can sell their produce and the profits could go to them. We saw what happened to the Cocoa Association, and of course we cannot go down that road again. Farmers must get up and form and revive the National Farmers Association. And through that National Farmers Association, they can source inputs and distribute it to the farmers at a cheaper rate than you get from the private sector. The farmers all of these entities can be in the hands of the farmers. So I think this is the appropriate time now to resurrect the National Farmers Association.
Mr. George, sustainability, the question of sustainability. Are we challenged with sustainability in Grenada? We hear a lot of talk about agro-industrial production. We hear a lot of talk about improving what we manufacture. We hear talk about value added and ensuring that we can add value to raw materials. But do we really have the scope and scale to scale to the point where it can be sustainable? Your thoughts on that idea?
Well, let me say that there's a challenge with everything, right? So for us to have that sustainability that we're looking at, there will be a challenge. But in my view, it is not an insurmountable challenge. We have to know who we want to supply, how much we want to supply them with. And I think what we need to do is to start at home, first of all. Because we all know of the high food import bill. And the food that is being imported, we have to look to see how much of that food, which of the items, and how much of them we can, first of all, produce. There are things which are imported into Grenada and sold at very high prices that we can produce here. Now, of course, one of the things that you observe is that the people who purchase to market, they're not willing to pay us the high prices they apparently pay for what is coming from outside, even if we produce a similar or sometimes even a better quality, because some of the stuff that is being imported, we have a lot of spoilage, and I suspect that's one of the reasons why the prices are so high. But we could get a better price, and we should get a better price, and in turn it could be sold for a lower price to the final consumer, which would be to the benefit of everyone. So the people who sell could still make their margin, farmers get a better bargain, and the consumers get a better price. If they get a better price, I'm sure our consumers would purchase more, right? So the challenge with sustainability, I think with discussion and proper investigation, we would be able to see that not every area will be sustainable. And therefore, we need to know the areas that are not sustainable. We don't pursue them in a vigorous way. But the areas that can be sustainable, we pursue them and pursue them vigorously. And if we drop the food input bill, we know that what that would do to our economy, you know that what that would do to our foreign exchange, etc., right? And to the benefit of the farmers, to the benefit of the consumers, to the benefit of our country as a whole. So we need to investigate to see what areas can be sustainable and what areas are not sustainable. And I think Michael was talking about organics as a way to compete and so on. We have, I think, some of the best soils in the entire world, you know. I see a young man now in the Manhattan area who's doing an organic thing, and it's just amazing to me, the type of production that he's having, right, without using the artificial fertilizers and so on. But he has gotten very creative, and he has had to put a lot of work into it. And eventually, I think he's getting to the point where he would reap great dividends. So we can do all those sorts of things, right? But again, I want to emphasize that what we need is a broader discussion. We need to sit down and pull people together. We have lots of people who know a lot of stuff, right? I mean, if you go back to Martin Bowden,
the knowledge pool is vast. It's wealthy, right, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. And I always think and say that I think the solutions to our problems lies within. If we engage our people and engage our people in a meaningful way, right? And not for media hype or you know,
or just to check a box, just to say that you consulted.
Right. but we do it properly. And I tell you something, in the revolution where we saw good benefit coming from consultations, people did say even then that it was just for a show. I don't believe it was just for a show. So I wouldn't say no that consultations are for sure. I wouldn't say that at all. I think that if we do it right, it could be very meaningful. And a lot of the problems, a lot of things, because, you know, Mr. Baptiste raised a number of very interesting things that if we get our people to, we must know what we want to do, what would make sense. We discuss them, we see how much sense they would make. And like you say, we set up a plan and we move towards implementing. Right. So all of the things, for example, like with the work brigades and farms and all those sort of things like that, it must not just be for giving people a job. And it does definitely make sense for giving people a job. But I think if we look to have good discussions on all those things, a lot of things can be restructured to make sure that the benefits could come to the farmers, the benefits could come to the country, the benefits could come to the people who have to buy food. Because as Mr. Baptiste said, just last week, somebody raised that with me. They said, yeah, I can't go and buy local food at these prices to feed my family. I have to continue the rice and the chicken and those sorts of things like that. And, you know, eventually on the up end, we end up with health situations, right? Why can't we produce our onions and our carrots? And let us have the discussions to see what it is that's needed and how we can do it. And I'm sure we could do it to the benefit of the farmer, the supermarkets and other people who sell, the vendors, and to the consumers. So my thing is really a call for discussion, good discussion, right? We have good people in planning, you know, what we should have, right? So let's have those proper discussions, bring everybody on board. You form small committees, subcommittees, whatever, and come out with a national plan that could work in a proper way. Not something that is up in the air that wouldn't make sense, but we have the expertise within. Farmers, let me just make this point. Farmers, I have come to realize, even though as farmers, sometimes we operate in ways that are not best, but farmers have great knowledge, really great knowledge, that if we pool farmers and others across the country and look to develop plans, we will be able to go really well, irrespective of what is happening, of who people support politically and all that. That don't matter, because at the end of the day is our personal lives and the development of our country.
And you are striking a very optimistic tone. We do have to get to the next segment. So, gentlemen, I do want to give you an opportunity for some closing comments. Again, the projection is in the next 6 months, we would see a private public entity. What that looks like, of course, it ought to strike a balance to ensure that the points you have articulated here with respect to supporting the farmers fundamentally at the end of the day is what would be the most important remit of that entity, first and foremost. But secondly, of course, that entity is sustainable, that it is profitable, that that entity would not be such that it would benefit private interests only, but that it really benefits the people who toil, like yourself, Mr. George, like yourself, Mr. Batiste. Mr. Batiste, you are indeed a farmer. I remember back in 2000, I would go up to St. Andrews to your farm, and we talk about agriculture when you were the Minister of Agriculture. So, Mr. Batiste, over to you for some closing comments. But before I do, quickly, I just wanted to, I did see some comments with respect to who is the Minister of Agriculture. Well, the Minister of Agriculture, some are saying that the Minister of Agriculture is Senator the Honorable Adrian Thomas from St. David. He is not the Minister of Agriculture. The Minister of Agriculture is the Honorable Lennox Andrews, who is also responsible for economic development, planning, tourism, ICT, the creative economy, agriculture, lands, fisheries, and cooperatives. That is a mega ministry there. I have some thoughts around assigning one ministry, but he does have the support of Mr. Adrian Thomas, who is one of the line ministers within that ministry. So I thought, as a point of clarification, we needed to make that point. But Mr. Batiste, over to you for some closing comments.
Well, now that you have placed the picture of my friend Tools on the screen and all the portfolios that falls under him, I think he's overloaded. Agriculture and fisheries. I did not hear fisheries mentioned. I don't know if that is his portfolio. Fisheries alone is a substantive. The Minister of Agriculture and Fish left to talking about resurrecting the rural economy. You cannot put it as a side dish with all this planning, development, and creative economy and all of that. I think that should be corrected quickly. Agriculture needs attention. Agriculture is dying. The rural economy is dying. We need help. Farmers need help. Our food import bill keep rising daily. The cost of living keep rising daily. When shall we learn? We saw what went pandemic, and it is time now. It doesn't matter how old is this guy. When a house is on fire and the firemen arrive, you don't ask, the firemen don't say, well, I just arrived here, I have to let it burn. The country is suffering. Rural Grenada is sinking. Grenada for help. The time has come where this new government must come up with a comprehensive plan for the resurrection of agriculture and fishery. And they must do so with a sense of urgency. Looking at the marketing board in a individual way just not going to help it. You cannot resurrect a marketing board resurrecting agriculture. And I'm urging the government, please pay attention to the rural economy. The collapse, it has collapsed a long time up on by artificial means to the previous administration. The time has come now where the problems that exist in the country, the problem that exists in agriculture is now in your laps. You can't say you must come with a plan and implement that plan speedily to bring relief to the rural people. If not, we're heading down the same path as we in the last 25 years.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you, Michael, cousin Michael. I still claim you as a man from St. David's. You are from Pomerose. But Mr. George, over to you for some closing comments, sir.
I'm not denying that at all. Both my
All right, Dr. Bob. Let me say thanks for having me on the program today. And
Yes.
happy to be in company of Mr. Baptiste, who has had experience working in the ministry and as a farmer. I must say that Mr. Baptiste and myself had some conversation a few months ago, and I'm very, I won't say surprised, but I'm very happy to see some of the innovations that he is bringing to his farm and taking care of his animals and so on. And I know that in time, those are things that he would want to share with other farmers and so on, because I think that farmers would benefit quite a lot from it. And I do agree with his comments that, the current administration is who is in charge now. What has happened in the past, we need to look at and learn from, and it could serve in ways to inform what we do going forward. But we need to do things going forward that will impact us in a really good way. We have a lot of information. We know what's happening with the food input bill. We know of a lot of what happened previously, which was not desirable. And we could now look at those things and build. And so I want to call again for dialogue, good and proper consultation where farmers and the community at large could bring to bear what knowledge, etc., that there is, that exists, so we could plan and not plan, just plan, but plan and execute in a good way, so that the agriculture sector could be put back on a sound and even better footing for the benefit of all of us, not just for my children, for me too. Because I want to have a good benefit from it before I would move on. Granted that I would have a few more years. But we could do well. We can do well for our country, and we need to take the opportunity now. Maybe what is happening around marketing board and the fact that government has decided to move in a particular direction is a good point, because many would not be happy, right? But it's a good time for us to look at exactly what's happening and move in a different direction. And I want to say that perhaps government need to consider well this 6-month period, right? Because there could be a lot lost for farmers and for the country if we wait 6 months. I don't know what would have informed the government's decision to take 6 months at setting up something new, right? And I really don't know. We have to wait still to hear what Prime Minister and government going to say.
Well, I believe there is a press conference this week. So unfortunately, I would not be able to attend the press conference. I would have ideally liked to be there, because I do have questions in respect of what that transition period would look like, because it all seems to be up in the air right now.
Right.
But that's a very salient point you're making there about that time period. What's the reasoning behind it? What was the logic behind that time period? Because, of course, the Prime Minister did say that they were not going to close the entity without having a substantive plan of action in place. But I did not imagine that substantive plan of action would take 6 months to be executed. But please proceed, sir.
Well, perhaps, and that's what I'm saying. We have to wait for a little while to hear exactly what it is government is planning for as an interim measure, and see how well it would impact. I can't imagine that government would just have really a skeleton operation, because that could affect farmers in a tremendous way. Already you have maybe close to 100 workers at marketing board who would have to be looking for jobs and so on. I think that there are many of them who will be creative and do good things, which would benefit them and their families and so on. But I think that we have to look to ensure that we don't have a worsening of morale among the farmers and other people who would have supplied marketing board throughout the times, because not only farmers supply marketing board, some other people who some of the small manufacturers and so I should call them, also supply marketing board. So we don't want a low morale among these people and a drop in income to the extent where they'll have to let go workers and all the sorts of things. So I'm looking forward, and I'm hopeful that government does have a good interim plan in place, and that things will work out. But like I say, I think we need to start a good dialogue, a good national dialogue, whatever form it would take. That could. I think we have a very good opportunity now. Let's take advantage and we have always had good opportunities, but I think now is as good a time as any, so that we can have a broader discussion and move things along in a very good way.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks again for having me. I hope that we were able to contribute to making the program a good one.
Absolutely. I believe based on the comments, people are extremely happy with both of your contributions. Madonna Harford, who is a regular viewer of the Bubb Report. Hello, Madonna. A great public servant, might I add. And trade unionist. Yeah, she's saying Mr. Batiste can be recognized as one of the best agriculture ministers, standing tall next to former Minister of Agriculture George Brizan. So some kudos to you there. Another great show. Latoya is saying another great show today. Thank you to the panelists. And there she's Karen Hailing is saying, Michael, this is one of the rare moments that you made some valuable contributions. I know you're knowledgeable in many fields, but sometimes you don't come across that well. Mr. Batiste, I think you've managed to impress one of the viewers here on the Bubb Report today. Ernesto is saying, I think Mr. Batiste makes some great contributions. I would like to have him to give some of these ideas to the new transformation team and to be part of the changes needed badly to move the new MNIB forward. But Mr. Batiste, you did indicate that you would in fact be providing whatever knowledge that you wish, that the administration wishes from you, even though you are an avowed Agariite. You are...
well, of course, I'm a Gilead, but I'm also a patriot, and I want to see this government succeed. And
Yeah.
May I add, I'm doing everything that I can. I just made a substantial investment in bringing in equipment to feed local feed from local products and processing equipment for meat processing. I'm ahead of the transformation agenda. My equipment's already here, and we are now looking to move forward. My equipments are here. My farm is moving nicely, and I'm looking to participate in the further development of the country. So I am here. I mean, I have a lot of ideas about how we could move agriculture forward. If the Minister of Agriculture or the government wishes to engage anytime to offer a little bit of advice here and there, I'll be happy to, at no cost, really. Because all these things that I'm saying now, those are things that I advocated. Remember, as Minister of Agriculture, I resurrected the industry when everyone else failed. I brought in equipments here for agro processing. Former Prime Minister took the equipments and he sold it to someone else. The equipments that I brought in here for agro processing. I also assisted fishermen all around. I brought in a gentleman here that was making salt fish from the excess of the fish in commercial fisheries before the former Prime Minister gave commercial fisheries to a foreigner. So it's not just agriculture and fisheries. Fisheries is important too, because we could use now fish waste for to process as an additive for local feed. So we need to bring fishermen on board as well. So agriculture and fisheries are very important. And we need to come up in a hurry. A hurry up offense is what we need now, not talk. Because talk is not going to do it. Marketing board would resurrect naturally when agriculture resurrect. But you cannot have marketing board marketing something we do not have. And that's the problem with marketing board. They're trying to market something that we do not have. How is that possible? If you're selling corn, you must have corn to sell corn. Marketing board cannot be profitable. It cannot be functional because agriculture collapsed. And that is what I'm begging this government, please. Look at the port in Grenville. The port in Grenville also collapsed, you know. The port is closed. Boatmen are now going to St. George's. A farmer with two bunch of plantain that want to do battering between Grenada and Trinidad, he now have to take a truck to go to St. George's with his 2 bunch of bananas and the single woman with a bag of golden apple. She now have to pay a truck to take that to St. George's to put on the boat to go to Trinidad. That is not cost effective. Please, I'm begging you, let's get with it. Come up with a plan like the rural economy. How long again shall we wait, my dear people?
Absolutely, and you sound like Uncle Gary when you say, "My dear people," on the Meet the People tour. Mr. Batiste, thank you so much. Mr. George, Mr. George, thank you so much, gentlemen. Very refreshing conversation here, very nuanced conversation. That is what we try to bring to the Bubb Report. We try to rise above the noise and ensure that we can educate and inform and edify our viewers and listeners. So, gentlemen, thank you, and thank you for what you do on behalf of your country and, of course, on behalf of your own lives as agriculturists. Viewers and listeners, please stand by. We will be back with the second segment of this week. The next segment of the Bubb Report comes to you compliments S.A. Johnson Funeral Home. They are a Caribbean family-owned funeral service. They offer a full range of funeral services at affordable prices in New York City. They can be reached on 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity. Last week, Mr. William Steele, a long-time retired chemistry and physics teacher who taught at the Presentation Brothers College in Grenada, transitioned to the great beyond, just shy of almost 2 months after the death of his dearly beloved wife, Dr. Beverly Steele. For most of Mr. Steele's life, he was a loving husband, father, friend, educator, and mentor. In these roles, he exuded the qualities of thoughtfulness, humor, and devotion. Mr. Steele was given the nickname Cobalt Chloride by his students at the PBC, who he cared deeply about and about their welfare and academic success. He played an active role in maintaining PBC's stellar science education curriculum, which earned it an enviable reputation among other schools on the island. Steele is sadly mourned by his 2 children and grandchildren, and by many generations of PBC past students who fondly remember his fast-talking, witty, and tough but fun approach to teaching complicated scientific concepts. I fondly remember Mr. Steele's ability to make complicated scientific concepts easy for the teenage mind, which played a crucial role in fostering the development of critical thinking skills to understand and navigate the many concepts in the hard sciences. PBC past student Lazarus Joseph writes that he was the most knowledgeable teacher he encountered. He made complex principles in chemistry easy to understand. Another PBC past student, Rodney Lendo, said, Steele would say, quote, "Ah, Lendor, those who aren't dead were badly wounded," unquote. May he rest in peace, and may his memory be a blessing. And welcome back, folks. We are now going to segue into, I guess, a more lighter side of the program. We've gone from more serious issues with respect to the Grenada Marketing and National Importing Board, and now we're going to look forward to entertainment, carnival, music, the promotion industry, and all of that good stuff. And here to bring this segment in for us is Dexter Mitchell. He is the former CEO of the Spice Mass Corporation. He is also one of the creative founders of the Made in Grenada Festival. Dexter, welcome back to the Bubb Report. The last time you were on the report was, I believe, a couple days after Spice Mass 2022. But here we are.
Yes.
I did give a commitment then that we are not going to have a conversation on Carnival only in the lead up to Carnival. We need to be talking about Carnival year round. It is a staple of the Grenadian economy, and so we cannot have conversations around Carnival only in the season to Carnival. So thank you. And we also have Bobby Steele. Bobby, are you there with us? Let's see if we can pull up. Bobby, we can't see you on camera. I'm not too sure what's happening with your internet. But if you can perhaps log out and log back in again. But Dexter, we want to open up the conversation. Carriacou Carnival is next week. We're seeing a lot of activity on the Sister Isle. What is the festival shaping up to look like? This really is a true and full return to normalcy in respect of carnival events. What are you hearing in terms of what Carriacou Carnival is shaping up like this year?
All right. Good morning, Dr. Bob, and to your viewers and listeners, and thank you for having me. One slight correction: I was not the CEO of Spice Mass Corporation. I worked with Carnival before the Spice Mass Corporation came into being. So I was manager of the Grenada Carnival.
The Grenada Carnival Committee. Right. Thank you for that point of clarification. We will make that adjustment. But yes, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. There seems to be a full return to activities in Carriacou. There is one major change, and that is the removal of the activities from the tennis courts in Hillsborough to the Hillsborough Recreation Ground. And that should make a huge difference in terms of participation, the creativity of the artists. I know the soca artists have long advocated for a bigger venue so they can do more presentations, more elaborate presentations. Yeah, so it seems as though it's going to be a huge festival in Carriacou. From all reports, all hotel rooms are booked, all available rooms, A, B, and B. Even some, I think a proprietor has even invested in tents, and those two have been booked out. So there has been some good music. And I must pause at this point to commend Export Studios for the wonderful work they are doing, not just in producing great quality music. I know they've done some work with artists here on mainland Grenada and in Trinidad, but they are working now on a project to develop young soca artists in Carriacou, and I think they are contributing to the Kiddies Carnival there in something that they have taken on personally, where they are recording the songs and making sure that the songs are available for airplay. So they must be commended for their efforts. And of course, the unique Shakespeare Mass that is going to be showcased on Carnival Tuesday morning. So I think all in all, Carnival is back in a huge way in Carriacou, and I think there is a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz. And hopefully that will culminate on Carnival Monday and Tuesday, a great success for the Sister Isle.
And I believe we have Bobby back now. Bobby, welcome back. we have you here. Bobby, would you be joining to Carriacou for Carnival?
Unfortunately, I can't go this year. Work commitments.
Working your tail, as they say, right? But how is in your observation, in what you've been seeing, what is Carriacou Carnival shaping up to look like this year?
Well, Dexter, basically, I put it out because that's the feedback we definitely hear, and that everything is booked out. I have some friends going across, and they ended up renting a boat. So they're going, they take a boat up. Yeah, they're going up. They're renting a catamaran, and they're going to go up and just stay off the boat and then go and enjoy the festivities because there's no rooms that they could have gotten.
The demand is so high that they had to get on the boat. They had to stay on the boat as accommodation.
Also interesting to see the people who are doing that are American medical students.
Right. Okay. That is impressive.
Yep. So that speaks to, how big the carnival is. Just to go off a little bit on the music, in Trinidad right now, what is getting a lot of airplay again is all of our artists. All of our artists, some of them on compilations with other guys. I mean, right now, Little Natty and Thunder, for instance, with Lyrical, they're in that road march trace right now, and their tune is getting more and more airplay. And it was you could say the latest entry into the race because they only released a tune a couple of weeks ago. you know. So Mr. Kel's song, the tributor Shadow, is doing well in the parties. So with all indications, Grenada musically, right, our quality of stuff that we're bringing out of Grenada, and our artists are really doing well for themselves in terms of getting the brand out there.
And speaking of brand, last year when you guys were on the Bubb Report, we had an extensive discussion about brand Spice Mass. What is the brand looking like? Where is the brand going? It was a very substantive conversation. Now we're looking forward to Spice Mass 2023. Do you believe, and I'll start with you, Dexter, do you believe that a lot of the suggestions that were aired out in public around the deficiencies that we experienced last year, that we'd have a repeat of some of those this year? And what are we going to do in advance of Spice Mass 2023 to ensure that we are not repeating the same mistakes of last year? I know recently there was an announcement that the former CEO of the Spice Mass Corporation, Mr. Kelvin Jacob, announced his resignation. It would appear that they are restructuring the board of the Spice Mass Corporation. So there might be some changes at the leadership level, but do you think that even those cosmetic changes at the top would affect what brand Spice Mass would look like for 2023? Dexter?
Well, sorry, I cannot say as yet. We don't know what the composition of the board is like. We have not had any official announcements. What will the structure be? Is there going to be some more reliance on the Grenada Cultural Foundation for the development of culture, and that leads to the product that we get for Carnival? Is there going to be a further decentralization of Carnival so that we have better participation from the parish and the parish committees? So we have not been given any indication as to what the policy guidelines are for 2023. But the fact that the former chairman is no longer around, now the former CEO has resigned, might suggest that there will be changes. I think it was a view that whatever happened last year would have been based on their personal agendas or their personal thought and not necessarily any policy per se. We had people going on radio and TV and making pronouncements, and this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And I want to get this done and I want to get that done. So I'm hopeful that once that new board is convened, that we get a general policy guideline for the way forward, where there is emphasis on quality local mass and the production of mass, not the importation of mass. Where we have quality music and the focus on music and the focus on production of quality music. Not just trying to put on shows, not trying to mimic what Trinidad is doing. Taking some lessons from Carriacou and looking at what is successful and why are so many people interested in going to Carriacou. Because if we do not set the policy, we continue to make the same mistakes over and over, where every person who comes into Carnival feel that they're in charge, they are the boss, and they are just going to do things their own way. The policy and a guideline must be set, starting with 2023. I think we missed the point. We missed the point in 2022, coming out of the pandemic. I mean, it should have been one of the best carnivals ever. And we totally missed that opportunity. And in fact, I would have recommended that the CEO should not have been given the chance to resign just before the launch of Carnival, but he should have been terminated immediately after Carnival last year and given a new group of individuals an opportunity to actually reset and put things in place so that we can have a fantastic Carnival 2023. So I'm hopeful. I'm hearing some rumblings. There are some conversations going on, but until we hear something public, I'll reserve comment as to what direction that new board and the new leadership of Carnival is headed.
Same over to you, Bobby, in respect of what you anticipate, what you hope that new leadership structure would bring to the table.
I mean, me and Dexter have had, different sort of opinions in the past on a number of issues and things like that. But I must say that one thing that we do tend to agree on is that we have to get things in place, because if we don't, what we're going to do is turn our carnival here in Grenada into a Trinidadian brand product. And this is not a negative thing towards Trinidad, but it's just that I believe that what makes us it will stand out is when we're able to hold on to what is special about the island. I've always seen Carnival in the Caribbean as Carnival is many destinations, right? And each destination, for it to survive as a product, each destination has to hold on to a certain level of authenticity to that product, right? And what we've been seeing coming in from outside is I would say, definitely way too much of an influence of the outside product, which in the short term might give us some gains, right? It might give us some gains in the short term, but in the long term, right, it's really to the detriment of our carnival on the whole, right? And so this is what I really think that the essence, and I agree. I mean, when carnival is finished, the decision on who goes forward and where we're going forward should be done very early, because I remember at the end of the day, when you bring in a new CEO, no. New chairman of board, no. We already into February, you know. We already into February. So it's giving them very limited time to formulate what it is will be the working formula to go forward, right? For this year, it means that you're talking about this year is just piggyback and then another year's loss, you know? So I definitely would like to see when we're going forward at this assessment made right after Carnival and decisions made by the government right after Carnival as to if we're going forward this or not. If we have assessed it to be a success, and what do we deem as a success? You know?
Yeah, and I suspect you agree with Dexter's positioning here that perhaps a new CEO should have been put in place right after Carnival, or a decision made whether to keep the current CEO, well, the outgoing CEO, in place.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. I can't say that they should have gotten rid of the CEO. That's not, because I am not in a position to assess what was the goals laid out by the board, right? To say I was not privy to what the goals of the board were. So in order to judge if the CEO did a good job or not. From both Dexter and my opinion, last year Carnival was definitely a disaster in terms of what we see as what Carnival how it should play out. But that does not necessarily mean that it was a disaster to the board, right? Which is, you know, the CEO works basically following the instructions of the board. That's how it should work, right? So that's why I say assessment needs to be done right after Carnival, right? And then decisions made.
Now, let us segue into one of the, in background conversation with you gentlemen, we discussed the promotion sector in Grenada. I mean, every time I look on GoToFet, I see a list of weekend events. You know, this weekend alone, I counted about five events. You have Dexter Dapp's coming to Grenada. Take it to the owner. I love Dexter Dapp's music. You know, we have the Mother's Day events coming up. We have a bunch of events coming up. Now, many are saying that the promotion industry in Grenada has grown so much. It has expanded beyond what we have come to know it as, such that we need to really talk about how we begin to regulate the sector, how we begin to regulate pricing, how we begin to look at issues around logistics of particular events. And I want to get you gentlemen's first sense of the promotion and the entertainment sector in Grenada. What do you think has contributed to that significant growth of events that we're seeing in the country? Dexter, I'll start with you.
Yeah. Well, I'm coming from 1998, Barry Salmon in Simmons, probably one of the most hyped event ever in Grenada. And what the industry was then, to the extent, Dr. Bob, that I had to get Barry Salmon a bottle of Hennessy backstage on the nights. And there was only one place in Grenada you could have gotten Hennessy at that time, and that was at Club Fantasia, to get him an entire bottle of Hennessy. I mean, and we see now, obviously, Hennessy is as common as white rum in Grenada.
Yeah.
The industry has grown, and I don't think it has grown necessarily for the better. There are a lot of people involved now, a lot more promoters, a lot more people doing events, a lot more service providers. When Steve Duncan and I were doing those events in the early days of Key West, we had to bring in a sound system from Trinidad because there were not the proper provisions here in Grenada. So it is good that we've grown in that sense, that people here in Grenada have invested in providing services related to the industry and providing employment. Of course, Wagati, Judah Sound System, Danny D, Blue Bubbles, and they must be commended. But I think, as you alluded to, there has to be some regulation of the industry. You cannot tell people what to do with their money if you want to go out and pay exorbitant prices to Jamaican artists who would not get those prices elsewhere and bring them into Grenada. Eventually, the market will dictate that you are making a mistake because people are not going to shop to those events when you pass on that cost to the local patronage. And I think we've seen that less and less people are going out to these events. There are just too many of them. In the month of April, for example, every single weekend, including 2 on Friday, the 7th of April and Saturday, the 8th of April, and every other weekend thereafter, there's a major event happening in Grenada. And to what value? We still only 100,000 people. And to what value can we bring out thousands of people every weekend in Grenada to provide them with quality entertainment? We've gone from the days of you getting 2 or 3 or 4 quality artists for $50 on a $50 ticket to now one single artist and you have to pay $100 or $120. I see Steve recently announced his reggae fest where you're getting 5 quality reggae artists and the tickets are starting at $100. And I think that people understand that is value for money, and obviously that will have a huge turnout. But you cannot say, whoever it is, the single artist with a mild hit, and people have to pay $120 or $150. So I don't know how it can be regulated, because if you have your money, if you have your funds and you want to put on an event, that's up to you. But there has to be some kind of regulation, some kind of pricing structure, because it is going to collapse. At some point, people are already fed up. People have voted in, so to speak, by not attending those events, and it is going to get worse. I think eventually the cream is going to rise to the top, that those people who can put on quality events will prevail. And it's not only the pricing, it's the quality of the event. When you get to the event, you have these young DJs on stage screaming, playing offensive music. I heard of an incident where some young ladies children, not even young ladies, some children, 8 or 9 years old, were on stage to do a dance off to win some prizes. And the DJ played Take Bamboo Girl. Like, how could you, what wouldn't make you even think about doing something like that? So I think those things need to be regulated. And it goes back again to something I've advocated for quite some time. There has to be regulation on what is allowed to play on radio. Because when we allow these songs to be played on radio, it says to the general public, and especially to a very impressionable younger population right now, that the societal norm is that these things are okay. So that you hear those songs, and imagine you have school kids sitting on buses listening to those songs with adults. It means then that the adults are approving of it, So there has to be some level of control at that level, and then it trickles down into society. And then maybe it is not so attractive to a businessman to bring those artists, because you keep hearing this refrain that, oh no, this is what young people are listening to, we're bringing it for the young people. And then you get 1,200 people in the show, So I would suggest there has to be some regulation. It would, for me, it would start at the level of the radio. What plays on radio? Jamaica, that produces those songs, has bands.
They have the Broadcasting Commission in Jamaica is extremely strict.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know what the NTRC is doing in Grenada. It's and my late mentor George Grant always bemoaned the fact that you pick up anybody to become a disc jockey and allow them to play anything without giving them an orientation as to what is proper conduct, what is proper broadcast conduct as a DJ on radio. And that has been an issue for many years. But let me bring back Bobby. Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
So those people who are on radio, not seeing the reaction of the audience, and they have this small grouping of friends, whether on Instagram or Facebook, reacting to them and making them feel that they're the hottest thing since sliced bread. These people are now transferred to a stage in front of hundreds of people and offend people and do not entertain people and are boring. So I think it starts, to me, it starts at the level of radio, if you can regulate exactly what takes place, and then it trickles down into the rest of society.
Absolutely. Bobby, let me bring you in here. The entertainment industry, regulating the industry. Some may say, as we have one viewer, Mr. Peter Cox here, is saying, free market economics. you can't necessarily regulate. People want to make a money. You can't tell them who to bring in or what to charge. And they would say to you, well, I'm already paying the 15% levy on my shows and on putting on my events. So what other regulation is needed? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, let me just go back a little bit to what Dexter talked about there first, because I think that is a very important factor. Like, I mean, right now in Grenada, I would say not right now because it was out for a while, but there's a particular tune that is so degrading, right? But it is one of the popular tunes that will play in the parties. Now, the thing with music like that is, I believe we as the adults, we can't keep talking about the behavior of our children, the behavior of young ones, the stuff they're listening to, when we don't make a stand as what we're going to tolerate that's going to be played. I don't believe that we necessarily have to have a ban on something. I think that the adults have to be able to make that decision for themselves. Why do I need somebody to tell me that certain tunes should never ever find themselves on any kind of airtime? We don't need we're supposed to be sensible enough to know, right? I mean, you're playing a song that basically say, you don't like somebody, go and shoot them. If you're playing that kind of music and then somebody goes and does that, and the young people are impressionable about it, and you're bringing music that is making people, in terms of giving them empowerment, as to be disrespectful to senior people in our society, right? Then we are the ones to blame. I can tell you that there are a couple of bars in the South that I could speak to, and I could speak to mine. There's certain music, I don't care how popular it is, it will not play, right? I tell my DJs all the time, I'm not good. I always try to see myself as, I don't have any children, but I always try to see myself as, if I had a young daughter, would I want that daughter to be, this is the type of music, this is what she would have to face, this is I know it's not going to happen. It's not worth the money to me. You know what I mean? And I think that more people just have to take an approach of that when it comes to the music censoring, right? I mean, why would we bring our artists? Why we as a country would allow our artists to come in here where the lyrics speak to women putting their hands in their private parts and sticking it in people's mouth and things like that? I mean, this is what we want our young society to come up, and I'm sorry, some of the women as well should be the ones leading the way against that kind of music being public and being out there on radios and buses and stuff playing like that. I mean, we really and truly, it's a internal thing that all of us have to make a stance on, right? In terms of the industry on the whole, I agree, it's a free market. You really can't stop somebody from doing an event, price structure and stuff like that. I always say the people themselves have to make a decision. If I go into a party and the ticket is $100, once I know that value to me is not $100, I'm not going to be upset with the promoter for charging me $100 because I don't know what is his expenses. I just simply make a mental decision that's not worth it to me. I'm not going to spend that money. And I think that's how things like that get regulated. People will realize, I mean, the in thing might be to go to it right now, but as Dexter is saying, people are already getting tired of that. The numbers are already dropping outside of the seasonal places, the December and the carnival period. So I'm not too really worried about that. I'm more worried about what do we allow into our country? I know there's so many different treaties and there's so many different things that are signed, so it makes it hard to think, but societies have to be able to defend themselves. And on that note, our Prime Minister said when it came to certain things, I remember not to quote him offhand, but basically the essence was the first priority of this government is the protection and the upliftment of Grenadians, right? And to look after Grenadians. So if that is the case, then we can't simply say that we are not going to do the things to protect our people in relation to entertainment, right? So in that regard, I definitely think that all people, the people on the buses, the people who are catering in particular to all age groups, should show a level of responsibility for themselves and what they allow, what they play, and stuff. And I think once the artists get that they don't have to come up with degrading things in order to sell, I think they themselves will change too, because they're in this business for the money as well. They're not just there to produce music, you know?
No, absolutely. And on the point of what content kids are exposed to, you always hear this moral panic about kids these days. Well, kids these days, they're immoral. They're doing this, they're doing that. Well, they must have learned it from someone. Parents, you give your children smartphones without any regulation, without any control. They go on YouTube, they go on the internet, and they're socialized by people, by strangers, really, if you think about it, who present some very warped concepts in their minds. So charity, as I say, begins at home. Yes. So you can't be coming down on kids these days or this generation when you are engaging in conduct that this generation sees. And of course, kids model behavior, right? And they don't know better. They're still growing. But that's just my thought on that. Now, let us get to some promoters in my research for this program express the concern about the taxing structure in respect of what they have to pay to government for putting on shows. What are your thoughts on that? Should the taxing structure be looked at in terms of what levies are paid to government? Dexter?
Before I answer, just one thing back on the last topic. I don't think Bobby's idea of self-regulation is working. We see what is happening. So that's why I think, just as the Jamaica Broadcasting Corporation has undertaken to regulate what gets to air. Now, if an adult goes to an adult event and that type of music is played, that is all well and good. But for public consumption, we must have rules that says this is not suitable for airplay and this will not be played on air. What is happening if it's trickling now into our soca music, because our young soca artists are hearing those dancehall songs being played on air and are saying, wow, if those Jamaicans and whoever else can have their songs on air with that kind of vulgarity, then I'm going to venture down that road because that is going to give me popularity. So I am very firm on that. Songs have to be banned. We have to send a very clear message to adults, to young people, to the DJs, to the producers, to the artists. This is not tolerable in Grenadian society. To the question of tax, Dr. Bob, I can't remember the exact year when the government of Grenada was introducing VAT. The players in the entertainment industry were calling to a meeting to discuss how VAT will be implemented for the industry. I proffered that we should have a VAT based on venue size. So, for example, if you are going to do an event at the Trade Center, there is a flat VAT rate for the Trade Center. Let's say, for example, the capacity is 1,000, then you pay a regulated VAT. And so you as a promoter, if you don't fill the venue, that's your loss. I mean, you are going in there to make money, you have to fill up the venue. And right around the island, we should have done that structure, that pricing structure, where we actually do the taxing based on the size of the venue or the capacity of the venue. The person who was at the office then was adamant that that is not the way it is going to work. Government is going to show up at the venues and they are going to count the tickets and they are going to impose a 15%. The entertainment industry is the only industry that does not have a threshold. So from your first dollar that you collect, you have to pay the 50% VAT on it. There was the issue of work permits. Although we signed on to CSME, and our artists do not have to get work permits to go elsewhere in the Caribbean, artists coming into Grenada still had to get work permits, and that became a point of contention for the industry. And I think at some point that kind of slowed things down. But I think there should be a structure that, like I said, you tax based on the size or the potential capacity of your venue, because it's too tedious. And what you find, people are finding creative ways to go around the system by changing the name of the promotional entities and so on. There are certain islands in the OECS that do not require work permits because of regional treaties. So we use more OECS artists versus using Jamaica, Trinidad, and Barbados to circumvent having to pay for the work permits and so on. The challenge, though, has been the failure of the industry players to be able to sit and have a proper conversation. And Bobby knows that very well, that there are those of us in the industry who feel that we don't need to talk to other people in the industry. There are those who don't have any knowledge of the industry and try to come in and agree to certain things that they should not agree to. So I think as an industry, we are very divided. We're very apart. And so that governments have been able to use that kind of divide and rule control over the industry to say, you know what, this is what we are going to do, regardless of what you guys think. And we have never come together to say, you know what, no, we don't agree, or this is what we are proposing. I mean, there are people who go back to government and say, now forget what, Dexter might be saying. This is, one of the challenges has been copyrights, and that's a whole different topic. But there has to be a sit down, a proper conversation with the major industry players, people who've been around for a while, the Bobby Stills, the Steve Duncans, the Wayne Redheads, who've been around for a while and who can add value to a proper conversation on the way forward for a proper regulated industry. And that includes what we import, it includes the tax structure, it includes the frequency, it includes something that is a sore point to us in the industry also, locals collaborating with outsiders and covering up and allowing people to come in and collect add-on revenue here in Grenada and go away with it.
Let's get Bobby's take here on this. Bobby, Dexter's theory of the case here is that because of the division in the promotion industry, of course, those who are responsible or who would have the responsibility of regulating the industry would have no appetite with sitting down with a group of people that are not cohesive, that are not united.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, there's been multiple attempts, right? And it tends not to get anywhere because some of the players that really need to be on board to lead the way, right? They unfortunately, for whatever reason, and sometimes it's, in my opinion, it centers around the political thing that they don't want to rock boats depending on what governments are in power and stuff like that because of their own personal gains for themselves rather than the industry gains for the whole industry on the whole. That's just my opinion, right? I just wish we can get together more and see the industry bigger than just any individual, because all of us eventually will move on, and what we leave as an industry is what is really important, in my opinion. Dexter is on point on a lot of these things that he says, but I definitely want to say at the same time, I mean, look, what we have here is an opportunity. We have a young government in office, young leadership, people who they understand a lot of what promoters are seeing in Grenada. Believe it or not, they know it. It's just for us to bring across the message right to them. And I think that, I just changing the subject a little bit because it centers around your discussion you were having a little bit before.
Yes.
Right? In relation to how do we see the industry? Is in the industry, the entertainment industry, just supposed to be about music, fete, cover charge. That to me, that is limiting ourselves to what we see. In particular, when you bring in the carnival aspect, the things that I see, the opportunities are for employment, the opportunities to change industry. I'll just give you one little thing that I really would love to see happen in Grenada sooner than later. The government, look, entertainment is a massive industry, it is way bigger. It's very hard to even put a figure to it because of how many people in society are affected every time there's a show in Grenada, right? Every time you can speak from the taxis, the hairdressers, the nail salon, nail techs, you could go on and on and on and on. There's so much benefits when you have shows, but when you have many shows happening, right? It also gives an opportunity, in particular for carnival, and speaking to mass bands, for instance. We don't have a carnival shop in Grenada, but we want people to produce local costumes, right? Now, if the government was to say, to put a fund in place, they operate this store, something like a properly managed MNIB for the food. Think of a carnival shop here in Grenada, where people can not only get the materials, but we are able to provide training year-round within that same structure, right? But now you want materials, you could go right here in a shop and buy it. That will help reduce the cost of the costumes. It will get a lot more people involved, right, in the industry here for itself. And I can speak to this, and the reason why I'm speaking to this for creativity is the one thing that you're seeing a massive improvement on in Grenada, and all the parties you go to and all of the events. You're seeing the decor of these events improving drastically, right? It's becoming a signature part of all the events now, all of the main, I'll say that the high-end events in particular. And this is being done by local people who, for the most part, have to spend significant money to bring that decor in from outside, right? So it's making the charge to the promoters and also helping for the ticket price to go up, because the promoter wants to have that in his event. But by putting it on an event, that price is now passed on to the patron coming in, right? It's part of that ticketing process. And in order to, if we had a store here, we would see creativity, because one thing Grenadians have is massive creativity. A lot of Grenadians work within the mass camps in the Trinidad, for instance. We have a lot of creativity in Grenada here. And you just look at the decor that you're seeing going into things like, for instance, Quarantine Point, right, for Christmas. Look at a lot of these parties that you're seeing.
The all-inclusive fetes, like, for example, Wagiti's all-inclusive fetes.
So why not get and it could be a product under the Spice Mass Corporation. It could be a product under a GCF. It could be an entity that helps fund those things as well. Because once you open that carnival shop, once you provide the funding that gets the store, a proper funding that gets the store off the ground, then the sales on the products could keep refunding for repurchase. You're selling at a cheap enough price, but you will still have funds to keep replenishing, and therefore you have a business. I'm not saying make it a non-profit thing at all. I think it has to be run like a business. But just look at the lighting. To get, for instance, glow sticks, to get wristbands, to get cups, to get branded T-shirts. All of this can be done through a one-stop place. That is literally everybody can go there and get. We don't have these things here. Everybody has to import, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, I think we can do better in those regards, right? So, and sourcing. Right now, a nightclub that wants to put a lighting system into their nightclub will have to send outside and bring in a light technician to operate these lights, because we don't have any facilities here training these people, and it is the way the future is going. I mean, you go to, I've been to so many of the islands outside, right? Look right there in Cuba. Every little bar in Cuba, every little bar you could go to, right? Lighting is an important aspect of it, to know all the clubs, all the things there. We need to get on our game here, and there's so many opportunities within the industry for different areas, like technicians, people who are into decor. There's so many. It's a massive field that we can enter into, and it will help improve the product overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Dexter, anything else you wish to add to what Bobby just articulated?
Excuse me, he's extremely correct. Our creativity and again, we've seen certain aspects of the industry expand. So, for example, printing material. You don't have to go outside of Grenada to print posters, to print T-shirts anymore. There are people here who can do those things very well at high quality and very reasonable prices. In all fairness, the new government has announced an emphasis on the creative industries, establishing a creative industries desk and funding for the creative industries. And I think that what Bobby is speaking of, that is where those things are going to come into play. That outside of culture and what we know as culture, and the further development of culture and preservation of culture and who we are as a people, we also need to make reservations for creativity among our people and funding for that creative industry. So creativity cannot be lumped with culture. Creativity has to be separate. And I'm excited about the news from the government that they are moving in that direction. I think this St. Lucia government, I think they've already established a ministry of creativity to deal with those things and to regulate, I guess, pricing and to provide incentives for young entrepreneurs, be it concessions and so on. And I think our government has announced that they are heading in that direction. And I'm excited and I'm hopeful that we will all benefit from that.
Gentlemen, we can go on and on. We can even segue. We need to have an entire conversation around the creative economy. The late great Beverly Steele, as well as Ricardo Kings Douglas and Francis Uras Peters, they always talk about how we can really, maintain creative standards, especially in mass, primarily in mass, but in other areas as well. People want quality. People want quality when they go to shows. A couple of months ago, there was this Dominican artist. First of all, again, no judgments to anybody. Everybody has different tastes in music. But I having listened to the artist, I'm saying people are actually paying to go listen to this person. But it's a free market. You can decide what you want to do with your money, right? And you have your preference and taste. But I'm looking forward, folks, as we close the program today, we will certainly revisit, I would say, in the next 2 months or so, as we get closer to Spice Mouse. We're going to invite you back again for another conversation. But I do want to give you an opportunity now. I'll start with you, Bobby, for some closing comments.
Well, I mean, I definitely am excited to see the kind of enthusiasm I'm seeing for Carriacou Carnival, right? That's a really good move. I'm excited to see that they have finally decided to move the events off of the tennis courts. I think that is also going in the best interest of the product on the whole. I want to wish them a safe carnival. I want to wish everybody going across, a safe journey, and let's keep building on that end. But I do believe coming out of that, that we need to put structure in place as early as possible. Let people know what is and on for Carnival this year from a government side. Let us know, get that board formed, get the CEO in place ASAP so that we can really move forward quickly. Because a lot of times I think the government doesn't understand. Sometimes I just think they must know, but for whatever reason, this transcends all governments. It's not pointing blame at any one government, but for whatever reason, they seem to think that Carnival works best when we only have like 2 weeks to organize everything. From a structure
it is a year-round operation. In Trinidad and Tobago, you have a National Carnival Commission that's there to ensure that not only the carnival product around Carnival time, but the other events throughout the year are executed with great precision.
Yep. So we do need that.
Yeah. Absolutely, Bobby. Thank you. And Dexter, some final comments from you.
Yeah, must use the opportunity, permit me, Dr. Bob, to send condolences to the family of Mrs. Venetia Kujo John, a former chair of the Carriacou Carnival Committee, who passed away suddenly earlier on this year.
Yeah.
She was a stalwart culturally in Carriacou, and it's a great loss to Carriacou and Carriacou's culture. As it relates to the way forward, I think coming out of COVID, there was a lot of energy, a lot of pent-up energy and excitement about what was to come. Obviously in Grenada, we missed the boat with Grenada's Carnival. Carriacou seems to be doing it right. The jury is still out on Trinidad Carnival. But I think that we just know, after probably 18 months to 2 years out of COVID, that we're actually settling into the direction of the industry. So a lot of what we are seeing happening now probably would not be around come next year. But I agree with Bobby that on the 12th of February, we need to start having some clear indications as to where we are going with Carnival. And there is a full-time office. Remember, the Spice Mass Corporation functions full-time. So even in the absence of a board or a CEO, based on when elections are held, there must be some planning, some structure in place to take care of the business of Carnival. So I'm really curious to see where we are headed with that and how quickly we can correct some of the ills of last year, ensuring that our top names are in Soca Monarch, for example, ensuring that we have marshals on the ground to take care of the bands and the processions, making sure that we start on time, making sure that Monday Night Mass was not the confusion and mess that it was. So I'm hopeful that the new board, whoever they may be, are already making those plans to ensure that we have a much better Carnival season in 2023. But I think coming out of COVID, I think we're just kind of starting to settle down now. I think some of the events that we are seeing now are not going to be around next year, probably even in 6 months from now. And the cream is going to eventually rise to the top.
Now, before you leave, I in reflecting, and again as a student of history, about the quality of music, about the quality of artists we bring into Grenada. Now, this was almost 17 years ago, and I'm going to share this story here. This is interesting. Grenadian minister raps Passa Passa. The education minister of Grenada, Clarice Charles, has come out, this was on 3rd March 2006, has come out against the emergence of Jamaican-style Passa Passa entertainment events on the Caribbean Islands entertainment circuit. Clarice Charles told the BBC Caribbean magazine that Passa Passa, the popular street dance, has no place in Grenadian society and is definitely not welcome. I'm hearing of something called Passa Passa, which is creeping into the public. She's quoted as saying, "It's where persons are having dances and some young ladies are half naked." Continuing, Charles said, "I think when we want to be monkeys and copy other people, we should copy the right thing. There is no merit in young ladies exposing themselves in public and letting a DVD be made of them. These things are reminiscent of Sodom and Gomorrah. This has no place in Grenada." She then goes on to urge the Grenadian people to let Passa Passa pass Grenada by calling it one of the biggest problems yet to face on the island, unquote. The more things change, the more they remain the same. I mean, is Passa Passa even still a thing? It's, is that trend still? But I'm just saying that the point I'm making is it appears as if we have these moral panics a lot around different dancehall and musical trends that come. But in terms of regulating how it's consumed, that seems to continue to be an issue.
I think so. I think that again, young people are very impressionable. So we have gone past the stage of Passa Passa, and I think that story was a bit exaggerated. The concept of Passa Passa was fets or street parties that started probably 2 or 3 in the morning and went into daylight, and you had young people climbing trees and dancing, and both male and female. So I think the same way the name Buju Banton was associated with everything lewd and vulgar in dancehall music, the same way Passa Passa became a synonym for lewdness in dancehall music. But one can argue, Dr. Bob, that since we were pronounced the land of 100,000 jab jab, we've created our own version of Passa Passa, where everything evolves into a juve and not a proper structured jab band, but people just dabbing themselves any time of the week, any day, and calling it juve. I think we even saw abandon it during the independence celebrations. So unless again we have those regulations and we can figure out how to use the energy of the young people. There was a time when Sunday morning juvies were a thing where people were encouraged, and that came from a ministerial level, were encouraged to play juve on Sunday mornings. And it used to happen around the island. So again, unless we regulate and ensure that the energy and the youthful exuberance of our young people are channeled in the right direction, that leads to better creativity, and then we're probably setting up ourselves for similar outbursts.
Absolutely. Mr. Mitchell, thank you so very much for appearing on the Bubb Report this week and for the valuable contributions you've brought to the table. We'll be certainly having you back in a few months as Carnival begins, the Carnival train, Spice Mass 2023 begins to roll out. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, Mr. Dexter Mitchell, he is the former chair of the Grenada Carnival Committee, not the Spice Mass Corporation, as he informed us. And so we acknowledge that correction. Now, on behalf of the hardworking producers of the Bubb Report, we thank you, viewers and listeners, for your participation and listenership. To the ladies and gentlemen who are in their kitchens right now, are preparing their Sunday meal, I know that there are a lot of you who watch the Bubb Report. So we certainly thank you for your listenership, even while you are making your Sunday lunch. And to everybody else who watches this program, please remember to share this conversation so that everyone who did not have an opportunity to hear this very rich conversation this morning can have an opportunity to do so. I'm your humble servant, Dr. Kellen Bubb, and we will see you next week for another spirited and informative episode of the Bubb Report. Thank you, bye-bye, and have a safe week, everyone. Take care. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.